morning, Jamie and Bob here, and today we are going to talk about camshafts, especially Gen 2 M8 cams. And we are going to discuss some of the differences, some of what we see, cover some of the questions we get day in, day out on these. And
hopefully help you understand a little better as to the changes that have taken place between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 platform.
Yep, basically we're going to cover a lot of the questions we get day in, day out on what the differences are between Gen 1, Gen 2, what works, what doesn't. And there are quite a few differences, and I guess we'll start with the differences in engines. And we're going to keep this a little broad. We're not going to get too derailed because we could have conversations inside of conversations. So the Gen 2, it's a lot different, but there's a lot of the same. So the first difference is compression between the engines. The 117 is going to be around that 10.3 range. Same as the earlier Gen 1 117, the 121s, and we're going to speak specifically for the non-VVT engines here today because we have, again, a whole nother chapter here we can talk about the VVT motors. We'll add some VVT stuff in there, but for the most part we'll concentrate on the non-VVT. So the 121, which is going to be limited to one model, that's going to be your CVO Road Glide ST, non-VVT, what they call the 121 HO. That one is a little over 11 to 1, so that one has a bit more compression than the 117. The 117s, they are really the same from the cylinder down, with the exception of they have a cam position sensor on the end of the engine there.
By the way, that's why all the cam covers look the same. I get a lot of questions about that. No, all these bikes got VVT because the cam cover is the same, but that's not the case. There is now a cam proximity sensor like we used to have in the 02 and earlier stuff.
And I know a lot of people want it. These motors have been out almost 2 years now, and a lot of people have went over a lot of the stuff, but we're just trying to give a foundation here for what we're going to talk about going forward. So the primary differences are going to be the cylinder heads, which it now has an oval port head. It flows a lot more. That's a lot different. It really is different. As well as the throttle body and intake. The throttle body is now 58 millimeter. It's placed different. It's on center. It's placed in a different location as earlier. Throttle body is twisted, tilted now, so it clears the cylinders. And with that, the intake manifold is very, very different. It's cast now, whereas the old one was plastic. It's not the greatest thing in the world either. And we're not going to really talk about all the stuff we're going to do. We're going to talk kind of about the stuff we're doing now because there's so much stuff in the works here, and we've been working on stuff for a year. And we just, what really took a long time was the power vision tuning side of things. We really had to have that down before we really could go full force into it. Nothing wrong with some of the standalone stuff that's out there, but in our eyes, to really do this right, you really got to use the control system that's native to the vehicle. It's just really a big part of it.
One of the other things that Jamie didn't talk about on the intake side is these bikes now have a 5.5 injector. So they went up in injector size from the previous generation.
Yep.
And I've had a lot of customers think that they need to upgrade that on these Gen 2 bikes, which they don't. 5.5 is going to be fine.
Yeah, and for most of the applications, again, 5.5s, if you're pushing it, you're going to want to maybe jump up to our 6.3 or whatever, but we haven't had a need to do that yet. I'm sure right now we're in the middle of testing throttle bodies and things on the 117s with cams, and we're going to be pushing them, so there are going to be probably some applications where you're going to want to go to the next size injector there. But for all the cams we've tested, there hasn't really been a real need to go to a larger injector. That 5.5, in that respect, it's coming down to physics and things there. So that injector has been reliable up to, you can push it up to 150 horsepower if you really push a duty cycle on it. But we're not there yet with these bikes with just cams. Big bore kits is going to be another story, and again, that's another conversation for another thing there. We're getting ready to release a lot of stuff about there soon. So, but sticking on the cams. So want to back up a minute. We're going to go back about a year ago when we started testing camshafts. So we started testing camshafts in the Gen 2 engines, and this would be a 117 at the time. And we weren't seeing the same results from the same historical cams that we use in our not even just cams from our library, but it turned into, I'm going to say it was almost like a tailspin at the time, because stuff that we know worked really well, that we're used to using day in, day out, as well as stuff that some of these other shops were using and trying and saying it worked really well, we're going, well, we're not seeing that. And a conversation came up with Danny from Zippers. And we kind of brought this, because we're doing this all on the down low. We're not really advertising what we're really doing, and we're keeping everything quiet. And the first thing we want to, we focus on here what a component or part or combination will do. We don't ever show or go back and say, oh, this won't do that, or this cam doesn't do that, or this pipe doesn't do that. There's no sense to that. We focus on the combinations, what we can put together, what it will do, and set the combinations up for success, not for failure. So we were seeing a lot of the traditional cams that we really liked, regardless of brand, manufacturer, all that, and bias as well. Some stuff that maybe we don't care for too much as far as what it'll do in one combination. We thought maybe it'll work in this. And we just really were struggling at first. And we tried a couple of the Zippers cams that they actually had developed for Gen 2. And said, wow, this stuff really works well. And then it turned into a conversation. And, on Fuel Oil and Zippers, our relationship has went back over 15 years. And we had a really good conversation on what we were seeing on camshafts, what worked, what we didn't work so good, and what really worked well. And that really, at that time, just all of a sudden opened up all the doors. We're like, okay. We need to look into this further. We need to go farther. We need to do a different type of testing. We need different parts. And with that, we kind of started talking with Zippers, and they've already done part of what we were doing. And they already had, this is about the time that a couple of their Gen 2 cams were coming out. And that's another thing to note. The Gen 2 cams will support just under about 540 lift. So you have a big difference. 485 to 490 is the max possibly you can go on Gen 1, where you got a bunch more lift you can do on the Gen 2s, and not to mention the cylinder heads flow a lot more. It's got a bigger throttle body on it, and what that really led to is we thought that it would be some of the more max effort cams were going to bolt right into a Gen 2 and work just fine, but that just wasn't the case. So we went back and started doing. We got a handful of grinds that we were trying, test grinds, and we started working. And that's where all of a sudden we started making real progress from where we had been and what we had seen and what we had tested. And that eventually led its way into that Z-Factor camshaft that we did with Zippers together. And that was basically a joint effort where we had tested, at that time, just about anything you could bolt in a Gen 2 engine, and then compile all that data, got with Zippers. They had a bunch of their own data. We put that together. The nice thing about those guys is it's basically farm to table, because they're every step of the way from the concept. They will do cam modeling, and then they'll go testing, grind a cam, and into production. They all do that in-house, which is really fantastic. And a lot of other great companies we work with are doing the same thing. We're just not there yet with some of the companies. I know a great handful of company brands that are working on more Gen 2 stuff. We're excited to test all that stuff, and again, we're approaching this as we're friends with everybody in the industry on the camshafts. We want to carry and support it all. These are all people that I know very well, and we really respect and love their companies and businesses. And we're excited to see what's going to come from, come forward. I would say we're just in the infancy yet, where we were, 5-6 years ago with the first gen Milwaukee-8 stuff.
You look at the evolution of what happened with the Gen 1 bikes from what cams came out at the very beginning. Very few of those cams are surviving to date.
Right.
There's only a couple of them that are still being utilized. So everything has changed, and it's the progression of testing and technology that we got to where we did get to with all the cams that are in the industry that really work well in the Gen 1 platform. And the Gen 2 platform is, with these differences we talked about, it's requiring different cams to get that same level of performance.
Right. And then, like, nothing, I can't stress more. Some of the cams that were real winners, some of the stuff we love, we know, we still love it in the Gen 1 stuff, and we're putting these, I mean, we do a bunch of cam swaps every week, and some of the stuff that we really love just didn't hit the mark on Gen 2. That doesn't mean that some of these cams aren't going to come back around and take a second swing and hit it all out of the ballpark, you know. But it's our, I'd say it's our job to deliver at that time with the best product, with the best value, the best tunability, with all of it all together, and that's what we're doing right now. But again, the biggest thing we're seeing is in a Gen 2 bike. I'll flat out say it. Use a Gen 2 cam, because that stuff has been redeveloped. And I mean, again, there's some other Gen 1s that will work pretty good, but you might as well take advantage of the higher lift and go up to that, you know, 530 or so lift, or a little better, and take advantage of that, because that's all stuff we found in testing that there were big gains. I mean, with our Z Factor cam, we're consistently in the low to mid 130s for horsepower, in the 117s, over 140 for torque, or rather about up to close to 140 for torque, and then in the 121s, we're above 140 both sides, 145ish on the torque. We have a couple of them we've done that have been 145 square, and it really depends on the pipe. So that's something else we want to talk about, is exhaust systems. That as performance has gone up exponentially, the need for a good performing exhaust has changed. And the days of using a side dump with no baffle, all these kind of things, like man, you cannot fuck up a Gen 2 bike worse than putting a big muffler, exhaust system, big baffle with the wrong cam. And we've had a couple of guys, a handful of them, that have done that, and we just can't even tune through it. And sometimes you gotta just be brutally honest. You got a combination or a set of parts that doesn't work.
Well, and I talk to customers every day on the phone, and I understand that Harley owners are truly committed to sound. But on this Gen 2 bike, if you're looking for performance, you may have to sacrifice some of that sound level you're looking for, because these bikes got to get a level of restriction or back pressure to perform like they can. And if you go, like Jamie said, you go to a short side dumpy pipe, that pipe's literally going to suck the performance right out of the bike. You got to get something that's going to give the restriction that these new cams are going to need. And when you do that, you can get a really nice linear torque curve out of it. If you don't, you're going to have a dip in the bottom end that's going to be tragic. And you get everything lined up, like Jamie said, the way these things have progressed over time with their performance levels, exhaust is going to be as crucial as cam selection.
Yeah. And one of the things with exhaust that, you know, the trend has went from long 2-in-1s, long primaries. That stuff always wins, man. You're not going to match. If you got a full length 2-in-1, a big long primaries with the right size collector, right size baffle, that stuff is king. I mean, we're talking from a 2,500 to a 6,500 RPM range. You can have some of the shorter, bigger pipes. I mean, we're talking stuff we make. It's going to be, what you want to do is you got to consider the compromise. You know, so like our Contender and our Riot, I don't know if you consider a short pipe, maybe a mid-length, maybe not quite as long as some of them. Them have been engineered to work about as good as you can on the bottom and still have that shorter style pipe and still have killer mid-range and good upper RPM. But some of these other ones that they just don't follow through not even just the performance, the tunability, trying to fight with the thing to make it run right. And now with the tuning on the Gen 2s, that's open a whole other subject there as far as the tuning, because the tuning is different in a lot of regards.
Like Jamie just said though, when you're going through a project like this, you got to decide what your goal is. If you're looking to make great big horsepower numbers, okay, some of these shorter pipes are going to be able to support that and do well, but you're going to give up the lower RPM, and you've now created a bike that's going to be a decent bike on the track, but it may not be a decent bike on the street. So you got to balance that all together.
Right. We have some other stuff coming too. We're gonna, you know, because I can tell you, again, not trying to jump too far ahead, like when we get into the big bore kit stuff, I'm envisioning the numbers when we roll them out are probably gonna be, you know, for, let's say a 132 or 128 on our, you know, this would be 4.5 inch stroke on the 117 bikes. I bet you we have stock head bikes making the mid 150s square, and I mean with head work, throttle body, we're going to be in the 170s for sure. That's just going to be a fact based on what we've done some preliminary testing and stuff. So we're trying to offer a whole package. So what doesn't, you know, these guys are buying some of the pipes that we see are you know, we were out Sturgis looking at some of the stuff. I mean, maybe not even talking Gen 2, but a lot of the trend with the shorter pipes, these things are these little tiny pipes. They get the small collector, or they'll do a bigger primary with a smaller collector to try to, they're all doing all these things to try to make a lot of these pipes work, but there's no other way to say it doesn't work sometimes than it doesn't work, you know, and there's application stuff does work for, but in defense of that stuff, even, the companies that are making it don't even know it doesn't work, or it does, because, you know, if you call a company, the one piece of advice, if you call a company and say, hey, I'm going to be putting this on a Gen 2 117 with a camshaft that should make 130 to 135 horsepower, and they go, okay, it should work great on that, or it will work great on that, hold them to it. Say, look, do you have a dyno chart? Do you have an example? Do you have a shop I can talk to you? Do you have maybe they have a tuning shop or an indie shop they work with, or somebody that does the testing of. But if they don't, if they're not able to supply supportive data, they probably haven't done it. It's no, I mean, they just don't know it, you know. So that's one of the things we have here. I mean, I mean, our own stuff can fall into that too sometimes. Like, I'm not going to tell somebody that this pipe, that pipe of ours is going to work on 190 horsepower if we haven't tested it. And things really change. I'm going to say above that 160 horsepower range and up. Things really change. One small element, the throttle body, the length of the manifold, camshaft, of course, huge. That all plays into what the pipe's going to do, and vice versa. As you go up in power, the pipe and the camshaft are going to really start influencing it more and more and more. And once you get up, I mean, once you get up to that above 180, one small change can make a huge difference. We've seen that with that Road King test motor we did some stuff on there. We've been playing the thing since 2019, and a lot of different changes. We've seen a lot of things that really can affect that.
I want to just expand a little bit on what Jamie just talked about. You know, I get questioned every day. I get a phone call where somebody's asking me to give them an answer for something we haven't played with, something we haven't tested. I can't give you an answer because we don't know what the answer is without having documentation. When you call somebody here, the information that you're receiving is going to be able to be backed up with data, with documentation. And if you're asking us a question about a combination we've never seen, we don't have an answer.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean we won't help you with it, you know, but you know, there's no crystal ball sometimes. You know, we can get an idea. I know Lucas has to pull a rabbit out of a hat a dozen times a day, you know, like, doesn't matter if it's a Gen 2 Harley or an Indian or a Kawasaki, you know, they're asking them things that just nobody can know all the answers for everything, you know. I mean, Lucas might think he knows, but it's just really hard some days where, you know, we'll get, I mean, and sometimes we get backed into a corner, like a guy will go, well, I got this combination with this cam and that, and but I'm gonna use stock injectors, and we can jump up and down and say that's not gonna work. It needs bigger injectors, and this is more of a Gen 1 M8 thing. And they go, no, that's my dyno guy, or this guy told me. And it's like, well, there's times where we say, hey, we're not even going to send you tune for this because it's not going to work. And we do that sometimes, and it's not to get people pissed or to get in with somebody. It's just based on experience of what we see, and we want to set people up for success. The same goes to our combinations we're talking about, and we're really excited to see a lot of these new cams coming. It doesn't matter if it's from, you know, which company is it from, and again, we love all these guys, you know, and we're excited to see what continues to come out, and it's just, we're really happy we got some real winners right now. And you know, if you're You know, Zipper's kind of led the way on the Gen 2 stuff. There's no doubt about it. They have a unique way of looking at things. They more theorize a camshaft. They don't focus on numbers, lobe centers, and lift and duration. They focus on what they want it to do, what the end result is, and that's really a really cool concept they use that I really enjoy working with them on.
So I can expand on that a little bit. You know, when we look at the performance outcome, we don't look at just the maximum horsepower and the maximum torque number. That isn't always relevant on how the bike's going to perform on the street. We build street bikes, and we need a bike that's going to be able to perform from 2,700 to 6,000 typically. So to go with a cam that is so overly focused on horsepower, for example, is going to create a bike that's not going to be that good below 3,500 RPM. So it's about an overall result. It's not about one small aspect of what the outcome is. And that's why Jamie's excited about a lot of these cams that we're doing, because we're getting really broad outcomes.
Right.
They're not so
wide
overly
power.
focused.
And that's what one of the things that, you know, going back to what I was talking about earlier about, you know, we tested virtually everything we could bolt in the Gen 2 to test, just to get the data on it, to see what it would or wouldn't do. That's one of the things that really surprised me is some of the cams traditionally that had that broad, wide power, with the same pipe, the same everything, didn't do just the same thing on the Gen 2, and that's why we're being, I guess we're not trying to be push that part, but that's why we're being a little bit fanatical about using a Gen 2 cam in the Gen 2 bikes. While we're at it, I might as well talk about that. Well, we've seen a year now of people putting cams in with different standalone tuners and stuff on the Gen 2s. Some of the stuff we've seen out there is man, we're not here to critique or criticize or speak negative and anybody or anything, but some of the stuff out there, we just say just use your best judgment. If it doesn't make sense and the numbers don't look right, there isn't people consistently doing it, or they have an agenda behind it, it's probably not right. And we've seen that. Some of the stuff that we've go, well, this is really, this place did this, let's try this, I'll put it together, ain't that. A lot of times they are right. I mean, we're not gonna take that away. There's a lot of great tuners and companies out there, but there's been a good amount of companies and products that we've seen come on the market for Gen 2 that just aren't what they appear to be on the surface. And again, we go, okay, you guys do your own thing, we'll do ours, and it doesn't always work both directions like that, but it's all okay. And just use the best product you can, that you can get the best support on, and hopefully you're setting yourself up to go further. That's one great thing about the Z Factor 534 is that cam will work really good in a big bore kit as well. We actually have I shouldn't be doing this, but we have a Gen 1 version of that cam coming out to release soon, because we actually did one of the versions of that Z Factor cam. We said, well, we tested it, was pretty darn good, but it wasn't as good as what our final 534 was. And when I said, hey, let's just try this we happen to have a 132 that was right at that little over 11 to 1, right where it might fit in, and it ran pretty damn good with the cam that was in it. We put it in there and it just hit it out of the park, man. I mean, it's fantastic. So we decided to grind that one for the Gen 1s. It's going to require valve springs because it's going to be the same 535 lift, but that will be coming here soon too. But sorry to get sidetracked on that. But on one last thing about dyno charts and readings that I'll go into is, you know, you've seen some of the, you know, we've talked about the SAE versus STD, and that's pretty straightforward. But what has came up recently is some people have found out a way, if you have certain options on your dyno, as far as the torque cell, using that to trick the numbers, because if they're doing loaded dyno runs, so if you load the drum up and make your run with a, say, 10 or 15% load, the software needs to calculate that 10 or 15% back into it, it actually overshoots it by a bit. And that's why and it's funny because it's come across a handful of shops that they're actually doing that, thinking that's the right way to do it. It's definitely not the right way to do it, because it can change its 5, 7, 10% increase on the numbers there. So we're not happy with it. We don't even have a torque cell on our dyno, so it's nothing that we've seen here. But it actually came across, one of our employees was tuning on a different dyno in a different state on a race bike a couple years ago. And they told him, hey, we make all our runs with load on, and he said the load was higher, so we actually went back and forth, dyno jet, stuff like that, figured it all out. But so that's just a little game they like to play, or they don't put the conditions or on things on there. And there's a handful of things, but just if you're chasing down numbers, you know, watch the shops that are staying consistent. Use SAE. It's just the right way to do it. And
in 6th gear.
Yeah, 6th gear, 1-to-1. You can make 5th. Actually, we're doing a lot of our runs on softtails in 5th because it's spinning that counterbalance so hard. It's putting static that's going through the drivetrain to the retire. So a lot of our runs that I've done on softtails Gen 2 with a 25 have been 5th. Just because 6th gear, it's a lot of static in the graph up through it, and it didn't make any higher numbers, so I ran those in 5th. But yeah, some of the beat motors we do run in 5th. But yeah, if there's any other questions you have on camshafts, you're obviously always welcome to call us. We're more than happy to help, or email that too. We're jammed up with a lot of stuff every day. I'm sorry we don't have instant support on the phone lines, but we're fielding hundreds and hundreds of calls a day, and we'll help the best we can that way. Email is always fast too. Try to get them back in 24 hours. But and Bob, I'm sure he has some stuff he'd like to talk about too, on stuff, maybe the tools, if there's any special tools. For the non-VVT bikes, everything's pretty well the same.
Yep.
The VVT bikes have a special tool to take the actuator off then and there. Yeah.
The one thing I am going to throw out here, one of the phone calls I get every day is talking with a customer that's doing a cam install themselves, and they're talking about top dead center and base circle of the cam. In the automotive industry, that happens. In a Harley, it does not. And my statement would be, why are you making your job so hard? Just don't put your cam cover back on and use the timing marks that Harley-Davidson put in that system to make your life a whole lot easier, because it will show you when you align it correctly that you're on the base circle of the cam. Because again, you putting a straw in your spark plug hole or putting your fingers on top of your lifters and turning the engine over is a whole lot of effort you just don't need to do. Just don't put your cam cover back on and look at the timing marks. That's going to make everybody's life a lot easier on an M8. Twin cam's a little different, but there's still timing marks there. Harley's done a really good job of trying to make this engine pretty easy to work on. They're trying not to make it, oh my God, you can only take it to a shop. But just keep that in mind. Don't make your life harder than it needs to be. Like Jamie was saying, it's really not going to be that different tooling wise. Again, the VVT bikes, we haven't gone down that path because the cams just aren't there yet for the VVT.
We have all the bikes here. We own them all. We have a Softail 25. We have a 25 Road Glide, and then we have a 24 CVOST, and we also have the Road Glide VVT bike. So we have everything covered. So the beauty of that is we're able to test. We don't have to borrow, or trade our kids, our firstborns, to get a bike in here or whatever. So that's always a good thing. So we'll continue to do that. One thing I was going to bring up is if you catch Bob or Tony or Rob or Jim or any of the other guys on the phone, and if there's something you'd like to see us do a video or talk about or discuss further that you think is really cool, or just something you want to see, just ask them. Just say, hey, if you guys have a chance to do this, because we really, when we do these videos, it's really based on feedback we get from customers. So we for sure are going to be doing another video here, me and Lucas, within the next week on Gen 2 tuning with Power Vision. We're definitely due for that, especially now that we have camshaft stuff out.
So understand, doing a video is a lot easier. Some of the requests I've gotten is, hey, when are you going to test ABC cam or XYZ pipe? That's not as easy.
Right.
Videos is something that's just some time on our part.
Exactly.
So just keep that in mind. If you're looking for, like Jamie said, if you're looking for information about progression on how to do certain things, like I just talked about the cam install stuff, we've got a video on that. But we've got, you know, videos if you want to, like he said, you're going to do more on tuning, explaining more of that. That stuff is easy for us to handle.
So yeah, I think we'll wrap up here. Again, appreciate everybody from tuning in. Hopefully this answers some of the questions on the hows and the whys we're doing what we're doing. But again, we got a lot of tunes done we got most popular cams covered for Gen 2s. And yeah, we're really excited, you know, to keep it going here and rolling forward into the big board stuff soon. And we'll post that one ready.
Excellent.
Thank you.